I'm connected to the same Zoom that you are, but we're going to be switching cameras so that at times you can see straight down, so you can really see what I'm doing. Because if I were working here and you had to try to see it, it wouldn't work well. So I've been doing this for about 4 years. And at one point somebody said, what is your hobby? And I said, well, my hobby is I collect hobbies. So this is sort of a new hobby. We're having a lot of fun with it. Nicolette had a brain injury, and my background in neurology and my interest in neurology indicated that coffee actually has some benefits. So we went ahead and started making coffee, and if you're gonna make coffee, you might as well have fun with it. So this is really the only opportunity I know of where I'm gonna give you permission to play with your food. So with that in mind, what we're gonna do is start by just making a cup real quick so that you know the whole process. So Betsy, let's give this a try and see if you can switch cameras for a moment so they can just see the process that I'm going through. There we go. See how simple that was? That's awesome. So I'll get this set.
How many hours were spent
yeah.
figuring that out?
The good old days when we had just a percolator and we made some coffee, but we've changed things a little bit. I have a V8 engine over here that grinds coffee for me. So I get 16 grams in 3.8 seconds, and I get it packed in. And so we just make a little espresso. I pump it down. You should have a handout that gives you all of these parts and everything I'm doing. So it's packed down, ready to go into our espresso machine. The espresso machine is already on and set to brew. So I'm gonna brew just a double shot. So there's 4 ounces that are gonna be brewed out of this. I've got a tank of water up here that has to be maintained. We use filtered water, so the Scottsdale water is pretty bad. And I had to clean the machine 2 or 3 times a year. So we moved to filtered water so we don't have to do that. Now, I've got my espresso and I've got a cup. What would be interesting though is to realize that sometimes you add supplements to your coffee. So I'm gonna add some supplements to my coffee. Well, I'm not, but I'll show you what we do. Nicolette didn't want me to share this, but I think this is an awesome idea. So we put in a tablespoon of this in the morning, and life's good. You get to see your benefiber. For those of you that are not driving much, you may want to also try some other supplements in your coffee. And of course, I take a shot of hazelnut and a shot of vanilla. Nicolette is a little more conservative. So we've got a cup, and we spilled it. Isn't that great? I can tell you in 4 years, I have never done that. So this is an opportunity to show what you do when you screw up, huh? There, yeah, and the cleaner comes on Thursday, so we're good. What I'm gonna do is luckily, I actually brewed 2 more cups in advance. So I'm gonna bring over a cup. And one thing I want to show you is that I'm using a turntable. I started to realize that I had trouble getting in the right position with the coffee. So I realized that a cake turntable gave me lots of options, and you'll start to see how that comes alive here in a little bit. So we're going to put that on the turntable and just let it sit there for a moment. And I've had to turn the espresso machine from brewing coffee, which is brewed at 204 degrees, and I changed it to the foam or the steaming, and the steaming is set to be at 280 degrees. So while that's heating the boiler up to 280 degrees, I want to go over a few things that we're going to be using. So along the way here, I've laid out some of the tools that I use, and I've gotten carried away at times. First of all, recognize that there are books. I've never used the books, but they would be nice if you wanted to. And the reason I haven't used them is what you're going to see here is virtually all the books cover how to do pouring latte art. You literally pour the milk in and create a white foam on the surface. Everything I'm going to show you today is etching. So it's a different form of art, and I'm going to be etching it. So when you etch, you have to have some tools to etch. And I started by using just chopsticks. So the chopstick, though, believe it or not, is a pretty big diameter. So then I started to collect, skewers that are a little different diameter. Then I realized that I could actually make this new job of being a barista tax deductible by turning, and Nicolette is giving me all kinds of things to do. So the director, okay, I'm moving too much. So I can actually go to a store or have medium rare, and then when I get this stick to come home, it makes the entire trip to the restaurant tax deductible. The same then with your little skewers for your olives, for your martinis, because we're going to be using those. All right, so let's see if we're getting close to having this. Betsy, what I'm going to do just for a second is I'm going to get some milk, and I think the first one I'll show you is something that Nicolette started. She decided she didn't really want milk, and so we switched over to oat milk. And oat milk is sort of fun. Milk. And let's see, what else can I screw up?
Can I interrupt you for a second? Ron?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Everything you're showing us is upside down. It's not your view. It's like we're standing in front of you. Did you want it the other way?
I don't know. Shall we try that and see if we can switch it?
Yeah, because the books were upside down and the milk carton was upside down. And I don't know, just people wanted to read it. I don't know if that's a big deal.
Well, but I think if I do this, it might take care of the problem.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I like that. My notes didn't indicate which side to slide this into.
Yes, that's what Nicolette and I are here for.
Yeah.
If they want questions.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and again, Nicolette's pointing out to write your questions in chat if you want to know how to dump 4 ounces of coffee all over the floor, or if you want to drop the cap of your milk into the coffee. Any of those things you just need help with, let me know. So we're going to go ahead and pour. And by the way, we started with cups like this. And then we got cups like this. And then Casey was kind enough to make some awesome ceramic cups for us. And then I know you're going to get dizzy for a moment, but what we now use are these. So we've sort of gotten bigger. We still only have 1 cup a day. So recognize we're only having 1 cup of coffee. It just happens to be in a gallon jar. So we also like a little bit of cinnamon. So believe it or not, this oat milk, I'm just going to put just a touch of cinnamon in it. Now we're going to do this magic thing over here of foaming it. So what I have is this heated to 280 degrees. I have the wand coming out. I'm going to turn this on. And when I turn it on, recognize you're going to hear 2 different sounds. Until I get it positioned correctly, it's going to bark. And then I'm going to get it so it's just right and starts to foam the surface. And I'm going to put my hands on the outside of this so that I can tell when it gets too hot to hold. So I'm literally letting this heat up. And when it gets clear up to the right temperature, I know I can stop. Also recognize that we've increased the volume almost by 100%. Well, certainly in this case, about 80%. So I'm going to let the boiler heat up again. Because I only have a single boiler, I have to fill the boiler with water because we dumped about half of the water out of the boiler. So it's pumping back full. And now I'll let that heat up and that light will go off and we'll be ready to foam again. But now let's do a foaming. When I get this ready, the heavier foam is on top and the liquid is on the bottom. So I really want to maintain my foam. So I'm going to literally hold back the foam with a cover and just pour the bottom of this milk off. So the oat milk gets poured right into the middle. Don't pour it too fast or it'll start splashing and you don't get a nice cremora. But hopefully I'll get a nice even cremora out of this and get a nice top. All right. And cremora is nothing but the espresso and the milk mixed together into sort of a creamy appearance. All right, so I'm going to put in just a little more. Next, we have several tools over here, and let me go through some of the tools. I got carried away. The first thing I made is I realized I needed to have something that had a point that would allow me to really work fine. So I took a tablespoon and bent it in the vise, and it works pretty good. Then I realized these things are available, and virtually all of these were designed either specifically for coffee or cake decorating. And when I went to the turntable, I started to realize cake decorating might be some cool tools. So what we have here are just some really easy things to work with. I'm also going to show you that I'm using some food colors, but I'm getting rid of food colors as often as I can. And the blue I've replaced with a blue algae. And this blue algae, this jar is sort of a lifetime supply. It really, really is intense. So I'm always worried about spilling this jar or breaking it in the kitchen, because I've already proved today I have the ability to spill things. So I actually take a small quantity and put it into a smaller container. So now we have a small container of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to take some of the foam that was left off. Remember, we left it in the pan. And then we're going to get a little spatula wet so it hangs onto the blue. And we're going to make just some blue foam. And by the way, I rarely decide what I'm going to make. I may decide what color I'm going to use. I may decide, you know, some other basic things, but it really depends what happens as I'm working. There's a question?
Megan says she's glad you showed how to clean up, but it was really me that cleaned up.
Yeah, I've got Vanna behind me making up everything.
I don't know if they can hear me though.
Yeah, they can hear you. They're hearing it through my thing. Okay, now, just like the pitcher that we used, I mentioned that the liquid goes to the bottom. The liquid's going to go to the bottom in this spoon too. So you have to recognize that I have to pour off the liquid or I just get a puddle. So I pour off the liquid so I'm getting lines. Now I've got some lines. Now we can just start having fun. And one of the things you can do with a turntable that's sort of fun is you can twist it.
Oh, cool.
And all of a sudden you've got a beautiful design. Now, let's say you want to do some other things. I like that. I probably would leave that just the way it is. So I think we'll leave it. Let's do another one. That's beautiful. We'll set it right over here. And let's take another one of Casey's beautiful cups. And this time I'm actually going to use milk. When I use milk, I like milk a little better because it foams better, and I use 2%. And the baristas that I've talked to, a lot of them like the 2% for etching. Again, because we sort of have a supersized container, there is 1 cup of milk. There is a dash of cinnamon. And we're going to now foam this. So here again, we're going to get a bark. And then we're going to move it so it's just foaming. And see how it expands again. We started with 1 cup and we're going to get it to come on up a little bit. It's still not hot on the edge, so I'm still continuing to work with it a little bit. Now my fingers are starting to feel the heat, and now it's just hot enough. We'll let it go. I'm going to fill the boiler just in case we get carried away making another one. Who wants one of these?
John Berquist.
Well, John already knows this, but that reminds me that I did go ahead and put the link to my Instagram account in the chat. So right at the top, you could click on the Instagram, and if you get sick of me making mistakes and spilling things, you can look at some of the designs that are on there. There's over 1,000 designs. So again, we've got the milk. And another question?
Yes, if you don't have a foamer.
Ta-da! These work. They don't work quite as well, but all it is you know, it's really a frother. Away you go. You can froth it. And of course, now I've sort of screwed up my surface. My Cremora won't be very good.
So Tamsin is asking if less fat is what makes better foam.
I really don't know. I do know that the 2% works better. The whole milk I didn't like as well, but I think it becomes a preference and you just have to work with it. When I first started with the oat milk, I frankly could not get it to design. And I finally figured out I was making too big of bubbles, that I had to really, really be careful and make smaller bubbles.
So they're wondering about skim milk.
And skim milk will, I think, be a lot like the oat milk. It's doable, you just have to make smaller bubbles and keep it in a microfoam. So again, we're gonna create Cremora. Make this come around here.
Your hand's is not showing it easily. I don't know.
There. So all I did is pour it in and make sure that I kept some foam. In fact, I've got probably half a cup of foam here. So let's look at my notes. I had some things that I really wanted to try. Oh, that would be fun. Let's go ahead and now colors today are not going to be awesome because I'm doing it too fast. So let's do justice though. She's got this beautiful cup that's browns and greens. So I think we really ought to do justice to that by using some greens. So I'll grab a little foam. I will, again, create the foam by, you know, getting it wet and make sure that we can make it green. It's not quite as green as I would like. Let's make it a little more intense. There are not that much food coloring that's going into this at all. And actually, you'll notice I use more blues than anything else because the blue is it actually is an anti-inflammatory, supposedly. So using the blue algae, I use a lot of it because frankly, it's not gonna, you know, it's not even food coloring. It's supposedly good for you. They use it in smoothies. I can tell you if they used as much in a smoothie as they suggest, I think you would see the results of your smoothie for days.
Rick, Tamsin's husband says that this foam is more stable without fat, which I think you know, but they may not have said it.
All right. And now we're having an interesting, it's not laying in as like I'd like, but we'll see if we can make this work yet. I've got way too thin of coffee right now, so it's not laying as well as I would like. I'm still going to go ahead though with the design and see if we can make it work. So I have to hold the spoon on the edge and just get it to hang. It's got to make connection with the fluid. And now I can drag it across. But until it actually connects and starts to come off the spoon, it won't drag. And you'll learn this the hard way. So now we're getting these nice lines in there. Hopefully that even looks pretty good that way.
You use Hershey chocolate.
I'm using Hershey chocolate. And now let's do something that creates a 3D effect. And I need a napkin that I didn't lay out because I don't want to drag the color. So here we go. We're going to see what we can do by coming across and just doing this. We started with straight lines, and now all of a sudden, it literally looks like it has hills and valleys, and it's going in and out. And it's such a cool design to think that you can make something totally flat look like it has, you know, valleys and hills and everything else. So that's sort of cool. Now, we're going to switch gears because I want to do as many designs as possible. The other day, and I need your help to start pouring these. I'll get one done and then Nicola will know what I'm doing. I'm going to switch and make this faster. I'm literally going to create foam and white by using a decoupage. So we're going to pour this in here and we'll let it come smoothing out. Nicolette, would you pour like 3 more anyway? Get those ready. All right, so we're getting this. This would be equivalent to the top of our coffee, right? And now I'm going to take and make some others. That's a little bit too thick, but that's good. All right, now let's do some colors. Let's try, what colors do you want? Well, I said that blue is awesome, so let's go ahead and try some blue. So we'll mix up some blue. And I'll tell you, it is really fun to look at some of the things people make and to try to figure out how they made it. So this is one where I'm going to show you the complexity that I've had baristas even ask me how I did it. So to start with, we're going to use our turntable and we're going to put in a circle, if I can get this to run. So see the advantage of having a turntable rather than trying to make a circle? Let's go ahead and put an outer circle on it. Oops. And no matter what you do, it'll make a design, so that's okay. Next, let's go ahead and put some chocolate into this. Let's see, we've got plenty of space in the middle here, so let's go ahead and put in another circle of chocolate. And yeah, let's leave it at that for the moment. Okay, this is the tricky part. This is the cool part. So I want to make loops and make a flower out of this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the outside edge. I'm going to come in and I'm going to loop back to the outside, but I'm going to loop back onto myself. I'm not going to loop and go along like a regular loop. It's going to be an inverted loop. So here we go. We go in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in. And all of a sudden, we have a pretty cool design. If you got that in your coffee, you're going to be excited about life. All right. Now, let's mix up something that it has some red in it. And I need the decoupage because I have to get, I don't really want to do that. Okay. There. Let's put some red. And where did my red go? Here's some red. We can use beet, but I'm going to grab this one right now because I haven't tried beet with this, so I don't know how it works. All right. Maybe a little bolder red yet. What do you think? A little bolder. All right, so we've got this. This would be our colored foam that's mixed up. And now we don't have to pour out the liquid, but I want to see how quickly this is going to pour because I have an idea what I want to do. So I have to see how it's going to pour. And I'll pick up my mess. All right, it's gonna pour. All right, pretty easy. So here we go. Let's try a little bit of that here. Whoa, it's really coming fast. There, here, and one more. Okay, now, recognize that the bigger the stick is, the more stuff you're gonna pull with you. So in this case, I don't wanna pull a lot with me. I wanna make something that looks recognizable to you. Let's see if you recognize what I'm gonna make. And there we have our hearts. Hearts are the easiest to make. Just put a little puddle and pull it out. Make it happen. Let's see, she's got another one here. What should we try next? I got some notes here. We've done hills and valleys. We've done, let's do something fun. Let's go ahead and do something a little more complex. Give me that decoupage container so I actually can pour it. No, I need to pour it out of the thing. All right. I'm gonna do one, let's say you've got a few minutes. By the way, sometimes I will take 10 minutes making a design, which means I have to put my coffee in the microwave to heat it up again. But it's rare that I take that long. Most of the time, my coffee designs taking less than a minute to just make quickly. So we've got some red here again. Nope. And I've got this so I can think about what I want to do. I think we're going to have a square meal for breakfast. So, and we'll start with squaring some things off. Now this is where it starts to become fun. What do I want to do besides what I've done? Let's think about maybe just putting a little there and there. Maybe one out here and one out here. Okay, next, let's add some chocolate and see where some chocolate might make it interesting. So let's think about where this needs some design. I think it needs some design right here. Got to get it to hold to the surface, then draw it out. Get it to hold to the surface, then draw it out. Oh, it definitely needs a little chocolate there, a little chocolate there. And maybe just a bit of chocolate here and here. Now that in itself doesn't look all that interesting. So let's see if we can make it more interesting. So at this point, we use a skewer. I want something a little smaller. I'm gonna wipe it off between wipes because I don't want any of the red to go where I don't want it. I have to think about how this design belongs. So I'm gonna come in from the corners. And I'm gonna come in here, and I'm gonna come in here. And then I'm gonna go out, and I'm gonna go out, and I'm gonna go out and out. And all of a sudden, we have, Nicola, would you turn that light off? I think it's getting a little more glare than I want. Yeah, it makes it a little better. So that would just be a simple design. And that was just starting with a square. And again, I think it's really fun to think about what you were doing and how it was done. So if you see a design, you really want to know, what did they do? How in the world did they make something that looks like it has hills and valleys? How did they do that? And it's sort of fun to think about. Now, while we've got this set up like this, I'll show you that you can also use a small and dip into chocolate or any other flavor and add complexity to what you do. So in this case, for example, I want to add just some black to make it come alive. And so we'll just put a dot there, a dot here, a dot here, And so we can start adding and add complexity to what you're doing. And it just really comes alive. Almost to the point where you certainly want to photograph it because you don't want to lose this lovely idea. You want to be able to see it. And that one, of course, fell where I didn't want it. All right, so we would have our nifty design. At this point, because I got carried away making these designs, I decided people ought to see them. So I actually have, thanks to Casey telling me maybe I should get a light booth, I have a light booth that's all set up. Can you see the light booth when they were showing that? Could you see it? So I got lights on each side. I literally take a picture of each design and make sure that I've got exactly what is in the picture, and then I post that on the Instagram that you see in there. And every day now you can see the designs, and you can also then figure out whether you want to replicate that in some fashion. Let's see. What should we try next? Let's do, I love the fact that we have this turntable that can just turn things. So I'm going to go ahead again and just put in some chocolate. And I'm putting intentionally a pretty thin line of chocolate. Put in another line of chocolate. Oh, maybe another line of chocolate in the middle. And because the chocolate I want to be pretty thin, I'm going to use a smaller skewer again. And that recognize that you get a very different view and different experience if you go in versus out. And people like symmetry, so I'm going to go ahead and intentionally work. You know, that glare is really bad on that. Let's try this.
Yeah, it is.
What if I, is that going to be better coloring? Yeah, I think you see it a little better, don't you?
Yeah, it's better.
All right, that's better. So here was what, let's go in for starters. So I come over here at 45 degrees and come in. And then I come in over on this side 45, top 45, bottom, and we get sort of this shape design. But it doesn't look very interesting. So at that point, then we can start going the opposite direction and go out on the others. And now we get a more interesting design. But it still doesn't look like it's very interesting. So then we turn around and let's go ahead and add something in the middle of it. And now the fun part is you get to name it. And so every day you should think about naming things. So what comes to mind immediately for me is cherry on top. So, and if in fact it was a cherry, that'd be great. On the other hand, maybe it's a heart. Nice. So now we could have a heart on top. All right. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and if you would switch camera back to the other view.
Okay.
I'm going to see if I can answer some questions. And if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, or if you want to type it in, either way, I'll let the people running it decide what they want to do to have questions answered.
Well, no question here from me, but you did a great job.
Let's do one more, Nicolette. Oh, she's got it here. Tamsin has a question.
She said you did a nice job.
Yeah, right.
We're going to pay her later.
Yeah.
Now you can unmute me and I'll tell him directly.
Well,
I heard you on that, so you are unmuted. That's good.
I unmuted myself, but I don't know if you've unmuted everyone.
No, I think it was just you. All right.
Betsy, I mean.
Oh, no, you can unmute yourself if you'd like to talk. That would be.
Yeah, well, what you can do is, yeah, exactly. But everybody should mute and unmute themselves. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of interference.
Right.
Absolutely. But I do have one more design that I made recently that I really like. So humor me. And Betsy, let's just practice. I mean, this is an art that you're refining and really getting good at. So there's a question, Nicolette?
Yeah, John Berquist, besides wanting a cup of coffee, would like to know what the best flavor or kind is. What kind of coffee do you use?
We actually have tried a number of coffees. On the handout that you should have received, I've given you a description of the Lavazza that we use. It's a very mild coffee. It's not a real heavy or dark bean. And then I'll tell you, I really like the ROC coffee here in Cave Creek. That's excellent. So I put in a direct link to them too. They have some awesome coffee. I will tell you that as you get more snobbish with your coffee, in other words, you act like this is a fine wine, you're going to realize that flavor starts to dissipate within supposedly 20 seconds. So we grind our own beans. We try to keep the flavor and really maximize things. And grinding your own beans is fun. It just adds another dimension to what you're doing instead of having, pre-formed coffee. And I'll give you a little hint that I've gone to baristas that really have a great coffee. I've used their coffee and it doesn't taste the same. And so I have a barista friend who was kind enough to have a conversation with me. And he said, your grind is probably not the right texture. So he gave me a nickel bag. No, he gave me a little bag of his coffee so that I could figure out exactly the grind that I needed to make to have the texture be the same. And that was sort of cool to get.
And we have a barista online, the Texas Scale from Alaska.
Oh, yes, the Sleepy Dog coffee shop is online from Alaska.
Yes.
That's scary.
The other thing, we have another person that roasts coffee. It's Lars at the Carefree Roastery. So we have ROC and Lars.
Yeah. Okay, switch cameras down so we can try one more thing to show you that you just have to have fun with this. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in lines of chocolate, but I'm going to vary the length of the line. So I'm going to intentionally come up here and put a longer line, shorter line, shorter line, shorter line. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Doesn't this look like cake decorating?
Well, Gail is saying she's not a barista, but she owns the.
Yeah, she owns the shop. That's better.
She hires baristas. So Ron, you could maybe go up there.
Yeah, I got a job. This is my new job. Now, I just think this is super cool to have those different links because all of a sudden you're able to take something that looks pretty sloppy and start to create something that's pretty cool. And that one drug more than I wanted to. So.
John, I think John Berquist is asking about if Lars is open, and he is open, and so is ROC.
Yeah. And then if you don't like your designs, you start to just do things that make sense. And you go, yes, this is Japanese art. I can tell right there. And of course, I have to also show you that any hobby is an opportunity to buy new things. And so in addition to the fact that I had to have this headset so that I could share with you, and of course you all agree that was an awesome idea, I also had to have this nifty little porpoise. And this little porpoise is filled with cinnamon so that if you really get good, you could just do cinnamon art. And my cinnamon is sticking. There, we're gonna do cinnamon art. There, can you see my lovely heart? That takes practice. So I don't know, what should we do next? Should we do, cake decorating will be the next step?
Well, you could use your designs to put underneath desserts.
That's true. Everything that we've been doing here, you literally can use these tools to do designs on plates and then put your dessert on top of it. And that would be cool.
Megan is asking if the altitude, we're at about 27 2,700 feet, if that's affecting things.
No, I don't think altitude affects things, but keep in mind temperatures do. So you have to be careful on, nobody likes cold coffee. So if you really are going to spend a lot of time doing something with this, you recognize you probably want to throw it in the microwave, heat it up so that people, get a nice cup of coffee that they like. Let's move back to the other view, if you could, Betsy, so that we can have some closing comments and wrap some things up for people. And Nicolette again has her hand up.
Susan is saying if she could have a class in person, and Susan, you can come anytime. Next year, I have Hidden in the Hills here, and he does demonstrations in the kitchen. He frames these, and so they're here for Hidden.
Oh yeah, there's an advertisement for you. Yes, you can get your own 10 by 10 of your favorite coffee, and you can pick any of the coffees that are on Instagram, and there's over 1,000 to choose from. And if you buy one of each, I give you a discount.
But he does do demonstrations in the kitchen during that time.
Yeah, Nicolette forces me. We're getting better at it. So do you have something there, Nick? Okay. Oh, you've got some of the designs that are laying over there. Well, I actually had no idea how long this would go, and I'm not going to waste your time, but I do hope you got the idea that actually, first of all, learning something new is exciting. And the opportunity to learn something is simply good for our brains. So I hope you have the opportunity to try some of this stuff. It's as simple as just taking the top of your coffee and playing with it and see what you can do. So Nicolette's bringing over some of the designs that we already made today, and we'll go ahead and try to have a group shot that incorporates, our variety pack here. There's quite a few that are in here. Well, let's go over briefly before I close that having straight lines and then making hills and valleys work. Hearts are simple. Hearts are just awesome, and everybody loves to see a heart. Recognize that you can go in and out and make different designs. Recognize you can use cinnamon and actually add flavor, but at the same time add a design. Dots add interesting enough to stuff. Just take and dip onto your chocolate and put a dot on. And my favorite that really got me excited was that loop again. Rather than just going in and out, go in and then back on itself and loop back each time. And that just adds a complexity that's cool. Every one of these come out different because you can't make them the same. And there's a lovely question.
A question is, do you have a suggestion for a coffee maker?
Well, in the handout, I put in Rancilio, which is an Italian coffee maker. But anymore, there are so many great espresso machines. I will tell you that it was hard to bite the bullet and start this because, that is not a cheap machine. It's a lot more expensive than buying, your mother's percolator that we had growing up. But I regret probably not stepping up one step above the Rancilio. And that's only because Nicolette invites people all the time, and so I make multiple cups. And because of that, that has a single boiler, and the single boiler is heated to brew at 204 degrees, and then I have to turn on the heating element and heat it up to 280 degrees to foam. Once it's up to 280 degrees, I have to run water off, I have to let it cool. And so you either make multiple cups of coffee at 204 and then multiple foams at 280, or you buy a more expensive machine that has two boilers, one for brewing and one for foaming. The foaming is much better than using the frother. The frother is okay, but what you end up having is you have to do more sculpting. I didn't show you sculpting today, but sculpting, I let it bark more, I put in bigger bubbles, and I literally create snow piles. And then once you have a snow pile, you can make it into the shape of a polar bear or whatever and put some eyes on with your chocolate or with your cinnamon. So you can do sculpting too. And that might be a different class that we would do some sculpting. In addition, recognize that baristas do not do what I just showed you very often. It takes too much time. They start pouring their coffee and they're gonna pour it, and then the last step, they're gonna take that liquid part, they're gonna go from 4 to 6 inches, which forces the milk underneath the coffee. They're gonna come right down on the coffee and they're gonna put in a pattern, and they're gonna be done. They're gonna be done in about 15 seconds, and that's all the time they have to work with customers. And so it's more appropriate to do what's called pour art, just pouring it. What questions might you have before we wrap it up? While you're thinking of a question, I'd like to point out that my niece was kind enough to make this lovely apron that has coffee beans all over it, which is really cool. And Nicolette was kind enough to help me with all of this. And Nicolette's hands up, which indicates a question.
Do you recommend a Jura machine? I'm not sure what that is.
I think you're talking about the grinder.
Oh.
Maybe. At any rate, I haven't talked about the grinder. Basically, any grinder is fine. I had a grinder and it worked great. It was like $120 and it was awesome. It worked for 3 or 4 years. The blades got dull and it actually died. So I went to get a replacement, and I sort of lived my life with the concept that bigger is better. And so we ended up getting a coffee grinder that is this tall. And I thought about cutting a hole in the cabinet to put the beans above, and Nicolette didn't like that idea. The salesman suggested that I put a hole in the granite countertop so that I could have electricity that went right to the middle of the countertop. Neither of those ideas worked. So what I did is I took another coffee machine and I created a small hopper. This hopper here holds coffee for 1 week. And so I have enough beans in there to last me for 1 week. I filled it this morning. Every Saturday I fill it with coffee beans and it's ready to go. This thing is awesome because it's preset. I just push a button and 16 grams of coffee come out every time. It's perfect. I love to have a scientific experiment that actually has consistency. I don't like this idea that every cup will be different. I know I've got 16 grams. I know what the temperature is. Everything's controlled. Yeah.
Gail is saying it needs to be a burr grinder.
Yes. Yeah, don't crush the beans. The burr grinder makes clean cuts and makes things really work well.
Okay, here's another. Other than a Rancilio, what brand would you suggest? The reason, tell about Sarah Leroy.
Well, what about her?
Well, the reason we have Rancilio is because.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'll tell you, because it's hard to hear you. This is the only mic I have. When we decided to make coffee, and I made a couple cups, and we actually went down, what was the name of that store I had my very first cup of coffee?
The Creperie.
Yeah, we went to the Creperie, and I had this cup of coffee, and I thought, I could do this. And that was 4 years ago. I'm like 65 years old. I'd never had a cup of coffee. And so it was sort of cool that, yeah, we could do this. So those of you that know me know that when I get into something, I don't do it in a half manner. So I got on and I started looking at YouTubes, and one idiot said that after 60 to 100 cups, you should start to get consistency. And I'm going, I'm a scientist. You do it once and you do it right, and you replicate it. And so I wrote down steps that Nicolette refused to follow. There were 17 steps. It involved weighing the coffee. It involved 2.5 pounds of pressure on the 40-gram post. I mean, I had the detail that really made this come alive. But then she wasn't really excited about me, trying to do that every day. So we got a hold of a former student that literally collects espresso machines, and I asked her what to do. And she sent me exactly what to do. She said, get a Rancilio, turn around and get a good grinder, turn around and go to Whole Lotta Love Coffee. And we started ordering our coffee from them directly. I probably get 20 pounds at a time, big bags in the back room. But at any rate, it's sort of fun to get into these things and have fun with it, because every morning I don't know what we did before coffee, but I do know that when I get up, I go to work. If you're awake, you work. If you're awake, you work. It's sort of this thing that's in my head. And we now have coffee and we talk. And so it's a great time. And the fact is, I am going to start doing more of those supplements because I haven't driven a car since like March 12th. So it's not like I'm going to be having a problem driving. So I might as well have some coffee. What other suggestions or comments would you make before we close it up and have fun?
Thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, why don't you turn your mic on and just make some final comments from anybody that just wants to make a quick comment. Something that you learned would actually, I do want you to all have at least one takeaway. So what are some takeaways you had? That should have had that as the question.
So I heard, hi, Ron, this is Reed. Yeah, hi. So I saw how you made your spoons. So I could actually go to a hobby store, Hobby Lobby, and buy a cake decorating spoon that would look like that. All right.
That is what I discovered. And in fact, there's an awesome place. It was near Brianna's. It is a specific shop for cake decorating. And man, that place came alive. There's row after row of cool things to do to make baking and cake making come alive. Can't remember the name of it, but they had all kinds of spoons. I got spoons that are like this, that are interesting spoons. I got spoons like this that are interesting, So I just had to have all kinds of these things. This was my original that I just bent in the garage on the vise. What else?
And you're happy to bend a spoon for someone.
Yeah, I have had people come to the house with their spoon and say, I'm here for you to make my coffee design spoon.
Can I ask a question, or am I interrupting something?
No, go for it.
Okay, I printed off your list of supplies, and this the coffee pen that you used with the cinnamon.
Yeah, it's in that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's in the handout.
I started looking at various ones, and every one of them had, somebody saying it was great, and every one of them had people who said, don't buy it, it's poor quality, poor quality. Do you know of one that's better quality? Or
No,
take your chances?
I think a lot of it has to do with usability and user error. Because if you put and get this moist at all, it won't pour. It's got to be super dry. I don't think we had those problems here in Arizona. I think most of them that you get down here, the humidity is so low that they're going to work for you.
Okay, thank you.
Nicolette has another one.
Well, you're getting new dyes, and someone mentioned about the contamination with the decoupage. And these are old dyes, and you're gonna.
Oh, I'm throwing all this away.
Okay, the other one is that a hand thrown cup always looks the best. You're right.
Yeah, again, it just makes it become alive. I'm starting to realize that even my pictures need to be a side view of the cup and not just a top-down view, because I'll tell you, people have no clue what it is when you do top-down views. So more and more, I'm trying to capture the fact that it's a cup of coffee. I didn't know that until people came by and said, well, I have no idea. How did you draw that? Or where'd you get a picture of that? They didn't know it was coffee.
Fascinating.
Anything else you learned today?
I really like the fact that you're using tools from other endeavors like cake decorating. And thank you for opening my mind to that.
And I didn't start that way. I started with the turntable. I thought, I wish I had some way to make a circle. And so I remember as a teacher, Nicolette and I both have taught creativity. And I remember a statement that came from a 1950s film called Why Man Creates. And in there, the narrator says, creativity is looking at one thing and seeing another. And I love that concept of looking at one thing, a turntable, and seeing another, a way of controlling coffee and being able to move it quickly, or being able to make swirls in your coffee, or taking design tools that were designed for frosting and making it come alive. So those are all cool. Thank you. Do more of that. Let your mind look at one thing and see another. Any other final comment?
Yeah, I want to second what Megan just said. I want to compliment your innovation, especially using to demonstrate the Mod Podge, which led me to remind people that once you get these skills down, you can use them in art. You can use them on the tops of your cakes and your pastries, and you can really, there's so many things that the simple dragging of the tool through the color, so many places you can go with this, and I think you guys did a great job.
All right, Nicolette has one more.
I have several requests for this video. I don't know if
It has been video, it's been recorded. Betsy, can I figure out, I'll tell you what, if I come over and put it, or Nicolette comes over, because I'm not allowed to leave the house, I'm under house arrest for 2 months. At any rate, if we could get that on a flash drive, I will load that to one of my sites. If people want it, they just contact me and I will send them a link to the video. I'll probably do a little editing on it. I'm gonna edit out most of what I dropped on the floor, you know.
Leave what you dropped on the floor. That was wonderful. It was
Yeah, that was
beautiful.
intentional. Did it work? I mean, I really had that worked out. I had to practice. Okay, the last thing I want to point out.
Don't edit that out. That was the best part. That made it human.
It was,
I
yeah.
sure did.
Yeah, and Betsy, I think you can get it on, I think it'll be recorded with a YouTube link that he doesn't even have to come over and pick up something.
Okay.
Give me
Yeah.
the link and I appreciate that. Other
Yeah, it
people
usually
will too.
goes,
I can send it to you because I recorded it to the cloud.
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
and then you download it on YouTube with a link.
Yeah.
All right.
we've broken the record for the online class. We have about 40 people.
We have 40 people for the online class, which is the most they've had so far in this venue. So thank you for all helping us make that. I want to point out one more thing for you. I didn't use this today, but many times I will use this syringe that is, I think you would buy them, it's probably for cleaning out ears, to be honest with you. But at any rate, I fill it with foam, with colored foam, and I can literally put just drops in the coffee that I want to use for hearts or anything else. I can just put tiny little dots where you want to work with. And it's beautiful to get your dexterity going and your ability to operate a syringe well.
Next class.
20 people here.
Good
All
to
right.
see you guys. Really good to see you both.
Thank you all. And remember, learn something new. It's good for your brain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Great morning.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.